When we think of private jets, what usually comes to mind is a sleek Gulfstream or a Bombardier Global. You know, the long slender fuselage, elegant swept-back wings, and blended winglets designed for high cruising speed and optimal efficiency. Not some stubby-nosed Boeing 737 patch job with gold leaf taps and a chandelier. You might think that more space is better, and yes, to some extent, Boeing Business Jets are the ultimate flying palace. But for 90% of private flyers, BBJs kinda suck, and for most individuals, a smaller business jet is cheaper, offers better versatility and availability, and is just the more practical option. Boeing Business Jets aren't from a separate airplane line. It's just a typical Boeing airliner with cabin modifications, most commonly from the 737 range, as anything bigger than that is often overkill. Anyway, these jets are pulled from the mainstream production line and sold green. In other words, no interior and no final coat of paint, just the bare fuselage, wings and engines. It then gets sent off to a completion centre. These specialised facilities, such as Lufthansa Technik or Greenpoint Technologies, then take the empty green airframe and install a luxury interior. This process usually takes anywhere from 12 to 24 months, and can cost between $30 and $100 million, depending on the jet and interior specifications. It's also worth mentioning at this point that Airbus have their own airliner turned VIP jet offerings, known as ACJs, and the process also involves fitting out existing airframes. For both Boeing and Airbus, their corporate offerings make up only a tiny sliver of the overall market for business aviation, and it's mostly governments and corporations who buy them. But at the end of the day, BBJs are impractical, and this stems from one important point. They aren't designed as a private jet from the ground up, and as a result, they carry all the baggage of being an airliner. Despite this though, many people believe Boeing Business Jets are the ultimate flying experience. Floor space starts at 75 square meters in the 737 BBJ, all the way up to 343 in the 777-9, and this allows for multiple zones like office and lounge areas. The larger BBJ variants have unparalleled range. The 777-8 version is able to fly up to 11,600 nautical miles. That's more than the Airbus A350-900 ULR, which flies the longest commercial passenger route in the world. And then there's the prestige. Being able to flex about owning a Boeing VIP jet with the airliner cockpit and big airplane vibes trumps any other kind of status symbol. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because the same traits that make BBJs look unbeatable are exactly what make them a pain for most owners. Let's start with the most obvious issue: cost. Obviously, if you've got a spare few $100 million lying about somewhere, this isn't an issue for you. But if we add up the acquisition cost, cabin installation, insurance, crew, fuel, hangar space, airport fees, SATCOM, then the whole cost could easily exceed $500 million for the top-end wide bodies. But all this expense is kind of pointless. Many private jet missions are short and regional, often 1 to 3 hours, and a BBJ's size and weight is unnecessary overkill for these journeys, as well as the additional aircrew required. A Global or a Falcon could do these routes easily, but even with the almighty range of the larger BBJs, you're still limited to where you want to go. You see, most private flyers operate out of smaller regional airports, with smaller runways because they are often closer to the final destination and are less congested with fewer operational restrictions. But with a larger BBJ, these airports would be off the table completely, because the minimum runway length needed by the smallest 737 BBJ is around 6,000 to 8,000 feet. That's way more than what a Gulfstream G280 or Phenom 300 would need, which typically use around 4,000 feet, with some being able to take off from even less than that. Unless you're a government or corporation with a large number of people travelling, then a lot of space in a Boeing business jet is pointless. Typical party sizes rarely exceed 10 people. And let's be honest, you don't need a whole airliner for that. But even if you did, then you're pretty much running your own airline. You'd need to adhere to regulations and perform proper maintenance. You'd of course need an extra pilot as opposed to some lighter business jets, which typically require just one pilot for short to medium routes. And then there's the issues of airport operations. I mentioned earlier that the size of the Boeing Business Jets limits their flexibility, and this is due to runway limitations, large wingspans, and the force exerted on the runway by the landing gear, as well as the lack of adequate ground support, which is typically only available at larger hubs. And in winter, de-icing time and cost are much higher than a normal bizjet. In addition to all this, quite a lot of airports have curfews and noise restrictions, and BBJs are of course louder and heavier, meaning they face these operational challenges that smaller, quieter jets can get away with. But to be honest with you, I think airport noise restrictions are a load of horse shit. Why live next to an airport if you don't want the noise? But anyway, we've seen there are several issues with Boeing business jets that aren't even a concern for most typical private flyers. But when you're finished with your BBJ, either you can't afford to keep it operational or simply don't need it, then you have a problem. You see, the resale of airliners is a tricky business. First of all, you have a tiny buyer pool. Because BBJs are primarily operated by governments, royal families, or large companies, they tend to purchase their jets brand new, for reasons such as warranty coverage and personalised interior. That means the used BBJ market is tiny, usually just a few wealthy individuals. Finding a buyer can take years, and because there is such low demand, resale values often fall well below the aircraft's original cost, especially if we are talking about older BBJ aircraft. Despite Boeing's Jet Quiddity program, which guarantees a minimum buyback price for BBJ select customers, older jets like the NG series can suffer heavy depreciation, as used jets often require at least a partial refit, and in some cases, the interior's value drops more than the airframe itself. Let's take the BBJ 737-700. In 2014, a brand new, well-equipped model was worth approximately $74 million. A decade later, the same model with low flight hours is around $55 million. This $19 million loss to depreciation represents about 25% in just 10 years, and could easily fall below 50% in another 10 years. Even with a large cabin business jet, say a Gulfstream G650ER, depreciation hurts less in terms of cash lost, simply because there's less money on the table to begin with. But who would actually buy a BBJ in the first place? Well, first of all, there's governments and heads of states, who need secure communication, room for staff, and just the general benefits of an airliner, such as its long range and big Boeing vibes. BBJs are used by royal families as well, such as the members of the House of Saud. Large corporations such as Walmart, yes, Walmart, typically use them for moving executives long distances. But by this point you're probably wondering, wouldn't it be cheaper just to charter a BBJ for rare or occasional trips? And yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, most of the actual flying these jets do is thanks to charter operators, who squeeze out as many flying hours as possible. It's generally much cheaper to charter than to own, and rates start at around $15,000 to $20,000 per flight hour for smaller BBJs. And this is a much better option for people like music artists, celebrities, and one-time parties. And for most charter clients, the wow factor of a BBJ is the selling point, not practicality. Unfortunately, chartering a BBJ faces its own set of issues. Availability can be quite limited in some regions, due to the small number of aircraft available to choose from, as well as a large share of charter companies being concentrated in the Middle East and parts of Europe. And if your jet isn't based near you, you have to pay for its ferry flight to come and pick you up. And at the end of the day, chartering a normal business jet is often better still. But that doesn't mean BBJs are a terrible option for all. And this goes for Airbus corporate jets as well. Because they're so niche, they're not really competing with anything, except the other jet makers' VIP line of course. So they will continue to be bought by the people that need them. Until of course, large cabin ultra long range business jets take over. So then, are BBJs terrible? Well, not because they're built badly, but rather they're not worth it for most travellers, whose needs can be met by a smaller, cheaper, more versatile business jet instead. So what do you think? Is my analysis correct? Or have I left something out? Please leave a comment below with your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this video, then here are some more you might be interested in. Alright then, I'll see you soon.